strongest character in the whole Avatar universe. Avatar Legends of Korra, strongest character anyone's seen since the birth of my guy Aang. Why?
Yes. Basically gets killed by Zahir.
Okay.
Dun dun. Korra was just always getting beat up, you know? Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew
and Aaron.
And today we are going over our power rankings for the Avatar: The Last Airbender universe, and we'll be debating the strongest character.
3, 2, 1, action. Andrew, welcome to our brand new studio for Backseat Directing's podcast.
Isn't this lovely? If you're watching on YouTube, the setting changed a little bit. Aaron put a lot of work into this. I think it looks great. Yep. We're going to be building it up over time, so you'll see some changes every now and again.
Yeah, it's kind of bare right now. We just kind of have the table in the middle of the room and nothing else in here besides the camera equipment. So we'll slowly start to decorate and add some more pieces to the puzzle to make it look even better and feel more and more like our podcast home.
But for now, in this empty room, we can just focus on this disagreement we're about to have, because I know our lists are not going to be the same. We have ranked for the top 5 strongest characters in the Avatar: The Last Airbender universe. Before we get into that, I would like to quickly go over a giveaway that we're wanting to do.
What?
Yeah, so we are giving away 3 volumes of comic books. So the volume is just a collection. They have about 5 to 10 comics in it. They are right here if you're watching on YouTube. So we have these 3 books that we're giving away. We're giving away an A-Force comic book for Marvel, giving away a Flash comic book, the first of the New 52 moving forward, and the first of the New 52 for Batman, the Court of Owls storyline, part 1. So we are very excited to give those away. And Aaron, we tell them all they have to do to have a chance to win.
Yeah, so all you have to do is comment below your favorite bending style. So water, air, earth, or fire. And then hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel and you'll be entered to win these 3 comics.
Sounds like it's super easy.
It is.
Yeah, if you don't have a favorite bending style, just pick one of them. We're going to listen. Or
we don't know if it's your favorite.
But yeah, this should be a lot of fun. We want to try and open up more people to comic books, so this is a chance to give people some source material. It's really fun to read, or it just looks good on the shelf.
All right. Andrew, let's kind of jump right into our lists. We ranked the top 5 strongest characters in the Avatar: The Last Airbender and Korra universe. We're going to be talking about these characters mainly in their prime, but we can reference at any point that they have been seen within the show or comics. However, we are not taking into account the Avatar state.
We are not taking into account the Avatar state, and we are considering characters who we have seen a good amount from. We're considering characters only from the birth of Aang forward.
Correct. So no past avatars.
Yes. So we've got 2 avatars we can choose from if we're going to pick them to put in our power rankings. And we divided them into 3 different categories to decide their strength. It's made up of their bending prowess, their fighting abilities, and their battle IQ, or their battle intelligence. So we rated them individually on these, gave them a score, and then ranked our own. And we'll be going over our reasons for why, and I will be telling Aaron why mine are correct.
All right, so let's go ahead. Andrew, tell me your 5.
Okay, so in 5th place, my top 5 characters in the whole universe, so still incredibly strong, is my girl Katara. Katara, an elite waterbender. Then in my 4th place spot, I have Toph. In my 3rd place spot, I have Uncle Iroh, not to be confused with Iroh from Legends of Korra. And in my 2nd place, I have, this might upset some people, Aang, Avatar Aang, and in my very first place, I have Avatar Korra.
All right, a strong list. We only have one in common. or no, two, I believe, in the same position. So I'm going to go ahead and start. In my 5th place is Zahir, going to Ozai for the 4th place position. 3rd is Uncle Iroh, which I believe was your 3rd place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then my 2nd place is Aang as well. And my top pick is Amon.
Okay.
Dun, dun.
So, well, let's talk about first picks first. So, why?
First place?
Yeah. Why did you put Amon in first place?
So,
strongest character of the whole Avatar universe. Avatar Legends of Korra. Strongest character anyone's seen since the birth of my guy Aang. Why?
Yes, I think he is extremely dangerous because he can psychically bloodbend, and that is something that he can do kind of under the radar. And then it's obviously probably the most dangerous form of bending that there is. There's a lot of other specialties of bending, like you got lightning and lava and stuff like that. But bloodbending is something that directly attacks and basically immobilizes your opponent, and you can basically do whatever you want to them. And we haven't seen many cases of people being able to get out of being bloodbend. We saw Aang get bloodbend, and he, from what we know, didn't get out of it himself. We did see the firebender. Hold on. We did see the firebender. What's his name? You don't like him that much. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Zhao?
Nope. Mako. We saw Mako. He used lightning while being under the control of Amon. And then we did see Korra get out of it with air. So my second point of why Amon is very dangerous and is the most powerful is the fact that he can take people's bending away. And I have him above the other, or above Korra, because he took her bending away, and she didn't get it back without the help of Aang, her past life. And I think the ability to control your opponent like that and take away their bending is something that no one else can really do.
So I have always thought that bloodbending is really strong, but I think there's good arguments to be made that it's not any stronger than spirit bending or energy bending. Bloodbending, from what I can understand, the only reason that Amon can take people's bending away is because of he uses bloodbending to block off their chakra, something with their chakra or their chi to change their access to bending their element. But then my character, who I have at number 1, is able to restore that link with energy bending and give people their bending back later in the series. And yes, she had a connection with Avatar Aang that gave her back her connection to the other elements.
Which is going to the Avatar state to get her elements back, which we said we were not considering. So if she gets her...
But that has nothing to do with her being a stronger person than Amon. Also, we're talking about season 1 Korra, when she's still 16, 17 years old. So I think you're looking at a very different Korra by the time we get to season 4, where she can now heal, metal bend. She is relatively a master of airbending. She has all these other techniques in her pockets. She can now spirit bend and energy bend, which she can do those things in or out of the Avatar state, even if her spiritual connection to Aang at one point helped her get there. We're talking about her in her regular state being able to do these things.
Yeah, but in a one-on-one fight, if Amon takes her bending away again and she can't go into the Avatar state, so what's she going to do then? In
that fight, she thought Amon was what she was claiming to be, a non-bender. So, like, we're talking about a fight where they're on...
At that point, they did know that he was a bender.
She didn't know he could bloodbend, did she?
Yeah. At the fight where... I'm thinking at the end fight.
So I think that on equal footing, where he obviously knows everything about her. She's the Avatar. She's famous. It could be a different fight if he was surprised that she could bend 4 elements. But if there's a one-on-one fight where Korra's at her peak and they both know each other's abilities on equal ground, she's already proven in that scene in the hallway that she can physically break out of bloodbending without the use of the Avatar state. So if she can do that, his bending's just not on par with her in anything else. Plus her physical strength. It's not to say that
it's very easy for her to break out of the blood bending.
She did it in an extremely weakened state at that point.
Yeah.
Not that it's easy, but she proved her capability to do it.
I think his ability to bloodbend, he has more control than her ability to get out of it. So like, let's say he has her like wrapped up, right? She could probably get out of it 2-3 times out of 10. You know, like she can't just get out of it any time she wants, as if it's not happening.
But that's based on
and at least
that's inherently based on the assumption that she can't do it every time. We saw her do it.
We saw her do it once.
Who else tried to bloodbend her after that?
I don't think anyone did.
So then we don't know if she can get out of it every time with
You're correct,
ease.
And that's what makes this conversation fun, you know, putting in our own imagination, our own viewpoints of how the stuff will go down.
So let's talk about our reasoning, because my reasoning for why I picked my characters, one of the big things was the amount of techniques they had access to, and something like developing rare techniques or developing a technique that no one's used before. Mm-hmm. So Korra has access, in my opinion, to more techniques than anybody in the history of the Avatar universe, because first of all, the bending of all 4 elements, we're ignoring the Avatar state here, so I won't count that as one of hers, but she's an elite metal bender by season 4. She can heal, which is something that Aang is never shown to be able to do with water bending. She has spirit bending, energy bending. She has a good spiritual connection where she can walk the spirit world. And that's just like an elite combination of abilities. Like she has the subsets of all kinds of different abilities.
Yeah, you make good points. She is very strong and well-diversed in her abilities to bend not only the elements, but like you said, the specialty elements as well.
Plus her raw physical strength. We see her like just pick up. At one point she picks up and hugs all of Tenzin's family. She just picks up like 3 kids and an adult man. She's buff.
Yeah, she's definitely strong. I think the reason that I had her so low on my list is her strategy aspect and her kind of loose temper. All the things that she does is mainly offense, offense, offense. She doesn't use a lot of defensive strategies, and I think that's kind of like what got her into a lot of trouble. So before we like did research for this, you know, and I just kind of put them in place based off of kind of how I felt about them, you know, off of my memory per se. I had her a little lower because I think I saw her get hit a lot more than I did, like, let's say, Aang, right? Because Aang is very agile and practices a lot of defensive moves compared to her. So we didn't see him get hit as much. But when he did get hit, he got hit hard, right?
Yeah,
and
I think
it kind of destabilized him a bit. But we saw Korra get hit all the time. Yeah. And I think in my head, before like I went back and actually watched a lot of the source material, I was like, man, Korra was just always getting beat up, you know? Like,
the counter argument to that is that Korra can take a lot more hits than Aang can. Like, she's tough and he would be very evasive, but for her to land a hit on him, I think would really hurt him. And there's an interview with the creators of the Avatar show where they said that they were asked about a fight between Korra and Aang, and what one of them said was 9 times out of 10, Aang would get away.
Yeah.
But the 10th time, she would get a hold of him and pummel him into the ground because she's that tough.
And that's kind of how I laid out a lot of my rankings per se, because a lot of them came out to the same score in terms of like the bending, the fighting, and the strategy aspect. And then I just kind of placed them in where I think maybe one would win a little bit more out of 10 fights or something, because everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, you know?
Yeah.
A fight could really go any way. The smallest opponent can beat the biggest opponent with a lucky hit or a hit at the right time or the right plan.
A unique ability, like we see Toph do in her first appearance as the Blind Bandit, like much smaller in stature, just defeating huge people who are more seasoned using seismic sense.
Yeah. I think I kind of went with people who are a little bit more balanced than Korra in the sense of being able to go on offense and defense and not just straight attack all the time. I feel like she kind of goes in head first to things and is very eager to dish out punishment that it gets her in trouble sometimes.
I, on the other hand, think that her raw attack and offensive potential is best fitting for this list, because we're talking about the strongest who would win in a fight. She's the most headstrong, the most willing to throw a punch, and I think that wins her a lot of the fights she does win. But I agree with you. So we ranked them at each of these categories out of a 10. I gave her a 7 out of 10 in battle intelligence. It's her lowest score by far. But it just was made up for in the fact that
I had her as a 7 as well.
Yeah, but her bending, not that, because Korra's not an idiot. You know, we see her use intelligent fighting.
She definitely
techniques.
gets better throughout the series too. But I have on here that she loses her bending to Amon. She basically gets killed by Zahir, only to be saved by the Airbenders down below that create that big tornado. At that point, she was poisoned as well, so she was battling stuff internally, or her body was battling stuff internally as well. But she also did get poisoned, so like that's kind of a point against her a little bit too, you know, is like letting that happen. So like, even though I think she went against maybe more powerful adversaries than Aang did, Aang kind of only went against that one big one in Ozai. But at the same time, she's like she's getting wrecked fighting these guys, you know?
Yeah, so for our debate, we eliminated the use of the avatar stakes. We're talking about the strongest individual character, and I think that gives them access to the strength of more than one character. And then you're just talking about like the top 5 avatars because they get stronger because they compound the experience of their lives.
Yeah, in theory, it would go like the order of the newest avatar.
Yeah, I think there's a good debate for Aang being stronger with the avatar state because he has a strong spiritual connection naturally, being an airbender and just him being gifted in that. But I think that Korra is without access to the avatar state. I feel like far and away to me the strongest opponent that a villain would have to face. And I agree that when you discount the avatar state, she has harder fights and harder foes. And I think that like both of them in ways have help in their season arcs, like with individual villains. Aang fights Ozai alone. Korra pretty much fights Kuvira alone. But I think that Korra I think it's her diversity and her mastery of the elements, like huge displays of strength, like when we see her fighting in the ocean, creating giant, you know, hurricanes of water, or her spirit bending where she has her Rava taken from her but still manages to create this giant avatar to fight Unalaq. Her feats are incredible. I mean, she's the person I would least want to fight if I was a bender in that universe for sure.
Yeah. No, I feel like the top 5 on both of our lists are obviously very powerful benders, and I wouldn't want to fight any of them either. Kind of going back to Amon a little bit, Korra, something that like had me put him above Korra was that he didn't really lose to Korra necessarily in terms of like, he didn't get ended by Korra, you know, like he got kicked out of the window more so because he was surprised because he just took her bending and then now she can airbend. And
I think it's the same thing with his abilities.
And then his brother ended up killing him and himself. So like we didn't really get to see him continue to develop, you know, like if they were to meet again, would Korra just like, she got one good blow on him, you know, and he got a lot more powerful hits on her. So like if the fight had to go to decision, you know, like a boxing match or something, I feel like I would have to give their overall fighting to Amon.
Yeah, but I also feel like that goes back to them not fighting on equal ground. Like the elements of her not really knowing who he really is. I think that, and like I said, we're also talking about an early Korra. Like she didn't even have.
She loses her bending. She does know that he's a bender.
But the argument is still there.
She calls him out in front of everyone.
Amon is a waterbender.
What? Remember
the argument? I don't remember that well. It's been I've only seen Korra one time, but Korra only has at that point 3 elements, obviously.
Yeah.
So she's not even a fully realized avatar. A fully realized avatar should have all elements mastered. She hasn't even produced airbending, so she hasn't even begun to learn it. So we're far from talking about Korra at her strongest in any of those fights. I think if he faced a season 4 Korra, she literally takes that giant bolt of spirit energy from that like mech tank and blocks it to save Kuvira. Like, that is a huge skill gap from the Korra who was like barely winning as the Fire Ferrets in season 1 to like a fully realized avatar.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to compare because we didn't get to see Amon past season 1 at all.
Yeah, and then we do get to see Korra, so we don't see them existing on the same plane.
So, like, let's say Amon was, like, the Fire Lord of Korra. Like, where could he have gotten? We just won't know, and that's something that you keep bringing up, that we can't really debate that. We've seen Korra stronger than she was when he was with Amon. But I think in the times that they did interact, it's very easy to say that Amon won. And it'd be hard for me to believe that Amon would just like easily continue to lose to her after that point, even when she is a better bender in season 4. I
think most people would argue though that the fiercest opponent that Korra faces is Zahir and not Amon.
Yeah, I think I have Zahir, 5th I said on here?
I think so. It's the first one you said.
Which, before we go into that, I want to talk about how on your list, you actually don't have any of the villains on your list. How did that happen?
Because I was thinking, because I originally had Ozai on my list, but I think that Iroh is just a more focused, more potent, stronger version of Ozai. I think he's the older brother, the stronger brother, so I replaced him. But I would have had Ozai on there. I feel like the Legends of Korra villains just don't feel as big to me as Ozai. They don't feel necessarily as big or as strong. I mean, everything Zahir is doing involves a team of other strong benders, and
he fights Korra by himself though.
He does. He fights a strong Avatar by himself, but he was going to lose to Tenzin. It seemed like in a one-on-one fight, and Tenzin's not in my top 5. So how can I put Zahir up there? You know.
Yeah.
He's also fighting a poisoned Korra, like you said.
Yeah. I feel like he's strong enough to at least make the top 5, you know, even if you say Korra is above him or whatnot. But like I said, like he had some pretty impressive hits on Korra, resulting in a lot of damage to her. And then not only did he almost kill her with the poison, with sucking the air out of her lungs, you know, he also left her mentally unstable for the beginning of the next season too. And like, I think that's something that kind of goes into it, is like,
but I think the poison was a big part of why she was mentally unstable rather than,
well, she kept having like flashbacks to the air getting sucked out of her lungs. Like there was like 3 or 4 flashbacks of that happening throughout that next season.
Yeah, I mean, but I think the Korra, an unpoisoned Korra would have been less affected by that trauma, because
possibly, but it still happened. And that kind of goes to his strategy aspect of this, you know, like that may not have been him hand-to-hand fighting with her, you know, but he still devised a plan to have her consume this poison that left her at a weakened state to where he killed her. She was dead. And then Lin's sister metal bend the poison out of her. So she was dead. And then she was lucky that a metal bender was there to save her.
Yeah. Korra then learns from Toph to bend out of herself. So it's like all part of her journey. Like the Korra is stronger and stronger. Like maybe the Korra at the end of season 4 could have bent that right out of herself, because she does learn to remove it from her own body after training with Toph.
And by saying those maybes at the end of season 4, it could be said too, like, what could have Zahir done in season 4? He just got airbending months ago and is like wrecking the Avatar, who has been a prodigy in all of these elements for the first 16 years, 17 years of her life. And he's had this for a few months.
I think there's a good argument for Zahir being near his cap right away, because Zahir's strength and prowess, I think, is directly linked to his spiritual connection, which is as strong as it's going to get. And he is incredibly strong. He can fly. But I think that strength doesn't obviously come from training. So I wouldn't expect more to come from training. It comes from...
Why wouldn't you think more would come from training if training got Korra to the point that she was at?
She's a different individual. He's a purely airbender. And I think that his spiritual connection is what all his strength seems to be built on.
I feel like anyone with training could improve.
Well, there has to be a limit on how much you can improve. Otherwise, they would just be strong enough to move the whole earth with earthbending.
Yeah, possibly. But I think there is still room for him to get stronger and possibly even outsmart her again. I mean, he's done it once before. Why couldn't he do it again?
I feel like Zahir is a top tier character. He's very strong. But to me, the individual characteristics, the way we've seen him, I haven't seen like maybe a really high battle intelligence. And yes, he's very strong airbender. But what we saw of him, like you said, was not a master airbender because he's only had it for months. So how high of a score can I really give him on bending? The flight comes from the ability to detach. It comes from, again, a spiritual connection.
He's giving Tenzin a master a run for his money. The Avatar a run for his money after only having airbending for a few months.
I don't think he landed a hit on Tenzin that whole time. I don't think he was giving a Tenzin a run for his money until the other members of the Red Lotus showed up.
I'd have to see, but I don't think it was like, oh, Tenzin's 100% winning this right now.
Tenzin's using defensive moves, but that is a natural state of a master airbender, is to use defensive moves. Yeah. And I think Tenzin was really whooping him in that fight, if you go back and watch it, until it's a 4-on-1 and he just kind of gets unlucky. But I love that character. Zahir is a great top tier villain. But to me, if I wasn't going to put Ozai on there, I couldn't put Zahir on there. And part of my thing too was, in my other characters beyond Korra, was picking characters who were so strong that they pushed bending forward by inventing new techniques. Like Toph is the first person to use seismic sense, the first person to metal bend, Aang is the first person ever to energy bend, and then Iroh is the first person to invent redirecting lightning as a whole new technique. So that was a big factor for me. I feel like a master Katara in her prime being able to bloodbend, like we know she can, and heal and have so many different abilities.
She can only do so with a full moon.
Well, I say that's probably canon, so we have to count it. But I think with all of her abilities, I would expect her to win the strongest form of Katara to win against the strongest form we've seen of Zahir.
Depends on the time and place, I think. I think that's one of those that the fights could really go kind of either way. Like if it's in a full moon, yeah, probably, because she can bloodbend and use all these different techniques of her waterbending prowess as well to help take him down. But if it's during the day, and not by water, like, uh-oh, that sucks for her, water, as we were talking about in our last Avatar debate, like you have to be around that element to be able to really use it. And she found ways to like pull it from her sweat and obviously bloodbend, but like that's not something that you can just rely on solely on a fight to win, And going back to Toph, I feel like it was very hard for me not to have Toph in my top 5, but I didn't put her in there because I think the reason that, or earthbending does have a lot of like disadvantages to it, and that's one, you have to be like connected, touching the earth, so if you
don't have to be touching it.
Well, you have to be around it. Like when she's on like
have access to Earth,
or she's on the fire ships, in the last season of Avatar. Like,
but Lin just always has the
disadvantage.
Lin just always has the chains on her with the suit, so she always has access to metal bending.
Like that.
But we know that she has the ability to do that because she invented the police force. We see a statue of her dressed like that, so we know she has done it.
She also can't see things in the air very well. That's not touching Earth. So if she went up against Zahir, that'd be really difficult for her. I mean, we had Aang, who basically only knew air bending at this time, beat her the first time that they met. And then he got the nickname like Twinkle Toes because she couldn't see where he was at.
That's a situational fight loss to a specific bender. It is a weakness, but weaknesses also come with strengths.
Also, you have to say like her blindness is a weakness as well that could be exposed, and maybe we didn't see it get exposed as much.
But that weakness is also
who's trying to specifically attack her. I think they can expose that.
But it's also a strength because it's also what gives her seismic sense. So it goes up and down on one end. I think that overall, like when you look at pure bending strength, she's near like the strongest an earthbender can be. I don't
think she'll win one-on-one fights versus all these other benders.
The reason I put her specifically on my list is because I almost had Boomy on my list, and then I came across the clip where she's literally holding up Wang Shitong's library. She's like an 11-year-old girl holding up an entire library. She's a child, and she's stopping a library from sinking into the earth. That is bending strength. Libraries has to be like thousands of tons of weight that she's holding up purely with her bending. Like maybe she can't see some projectiles, but come on.
Yeah, she's very strong, but that's also a feat of strength that's not involved in a fight. And that's kind of what we were talking about, is like these power rankings of avatars or of these benders going kind of head to head.
But that's how we measure strength, though, so.
It's an element to it, yeah. So if you've been watching this far, thank you so much. Remember to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and comment down below in this video for your favorite bending element. And you will have the opportunity to win these 3 comic books that Andrew has.
Right here if you're on YouTube.
Comment below and subscribe.
So going right back into the show. Aaron, I noticed on your list of 5, there are only 3 of the 4 elements represented. Why do you think you don't have an earthbender on your list of top 5 strongest characters?
Good question. Aang does earthbend, so earthbending is represented, but there's not a solo earthbender, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I just think the other characters and elements are stronger in a one-on-one fight. I think Earth is more of an element that you kind of like live off of and is more defensive and stuff like that. I just think that in my opinion, these characters would edge out the Earthbenders in a fight. You also have 2 avatars in your list, which I mean makes sense. They're supposed to be one of the strongest ones.
This man didn't even put Korra in the top 5. Korra's
is 6th.
Talking about how I didn't have Zahir, you didn't have Korra.
Yeah,
the latest greatest avatar in the cycle.
So rewatching some clips and stuff when I was doing research, I was like, okay, she's pretty strong, but I still can't have her above Zahir or Amon because she lost to them.
I mean, she needed help to maybe defeat them in a sense, and we didn't necessarily see her defeat Amon, but we didn't see Amon fully defeat her either. She lived. So
she did, but she lost her bending, and the only way she got it back was the avatar state, and that's something that we weren't supposed to take into consideration.
Also, losing your bending doesn't necessarily mean losing the fight if the fight's not fully over. Because my girl Korra was still standing. Like Ty Lee, Amon, all these people fight. I'm not saying she won because she was laying on the ground, but I'm saying it doesn't mean she lost that fight because I'm saying people like Ty Lee, Amon have shown time and time again. Not people even without bending can fight, and we know Korra has hands whether she has bending or not. So the fight was not done.
Too. He's like dodging lightning and stuff when he first took that bender's bending away in one of the first episodes, and he's like dodging the lightning, and like is blocking because he had to hide the fact that he was a bender. So he's like using like subtle blood bending to kind of move his way around, and also chi blocking, just like you said, like Tai Lin, moving around, and then zapped his bending away, which one of the coolest shots in the whole series, where he's like shooting the lightning's going through his hand, Amon has his hand on his head, and then the lightning turns into fire, and then the fire slowly goes out.
It is really cool. Shot. Yeah, that looks really good. It's really well animated. I mean, Legends of Korra especially.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it's hard for me to think that earthbending wouldn't be on the list because metal bending is just such an elite talent. We've seen how far it can go in season 4 of Legends of Korra, how deadly of a weapon it is, and how just good it looks in a fight. Like the fights with Kuvira, all of them are so great and great representations of metal bending just being like a force to be reckoned with in the Avatar universe.
Yeah, and there's also like lava bending too, which is very rare, but it's still a possibility that could make these earthbenders stronger than maybe I originally calculated. So,
but hey, each bending style has their own merits. But we tried to be objective with our list and look at who is the strongest. We will publish our specific rankings, but I won't bore you guys going over like a whole slew of statistics and numbers here with what my scores were for each individual character. We'll put those out there for you guys to see, whether it's on TikTok or YouTube on the video, one or the other. While I said we were being objective, we tried to separate our favorite characters from our strongest. So who are your favorite characters, strength aside?
I like Aang, Zahir, and Zuko. Iroh as well.
My top three.
Those are some of my favorite.
My top 3 characters for Avatar are all going to be from the first series, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Top 3 characters are Toph, Uncle Iroh, and Aang. Those are my favorite characters. I think Zuko is probably the best written, but I think those three are my personal favorites. And we can do episodes breaking that stuff down later on, but I was just curious to hear how different it was than your list of the strongest.
All right, everyone, that kind of wraps up our discussion of our top 5 strongest benders in the Avatar Korra universe. Thank you so much for listening. If you think we're wrong or we missed someone who should be on the top 5 or our order is all wrong, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear why you rank them differently than us. If you agree with us, let us know as well.
Yeah, comment and definitely let us know who we missed. I'm sure that we did.
All right, and that's
a wrap.